Jesus freak here. You've probably noticed I've made a few editorial decisions in the choice of the hymn tunes I've used in some of my videos. And usually there's nothing specific about it, but there's been a few cases where my decision's been politically motivated. And in these cases that I'm going to show, the tunes I'm using are not going to be necessarily the ones when they show up in my videos. I'm not going to be using those tunes. Now, the first of these is called Glorious Things of Thee Are Spoken. Its claim to fame, of course, the lyrics are written by John Newton, the guy who wrote Amazing Grace. Now, the problem with this tune, I mean, it's Haydn. It's not exactly like there's anything necessarily inherently wrong with the tune. The problem is the association it's gotten since the 1940s. It's this tune. The problem here is that it kind of gained Nazi associations in the 30s and 40s. So I'm like, I'm not about to throw away a good hymn because the tune's problematic. There's a hymn with a similar title in the 1985 Latter-day Saints hymn. And I'm like, well, it's a good choice of tune, but the words are problematic because it's Mormon doctrine. So I took that tune, which I'm already using for other hymns, and I associated it with these lyrics. Glorious things of thee are spoken, Zion, city of our God, he whose word cannot be broken, formed thee for his own abode. I use this tune. I mean, it's not as good a match, but it does work. And there was another hymn that I felt was, it's a good hymn, but the tune is a Russian patriotic tune, and I don't think I need to explain what the problem with that is right now. This is probably the only time you're going to hear that tune on my channel. I wanted something that had a similar vibe. So I started tearing through my hymnals, as I do, and I found one that almost worked, but needed a little tweaking to the rhythm. So I took these words, God the omnipotent, King who ordainest, thunder thy clarion, the lightning thy sword, show forth thy pity on high where thou reignest, give to us peace in our time, O Lord. And I wound up associating it with a different hymn tune that's associated more with the lines. I gotta find the hymn. But it's a totally different one. But it starts, we would see Jesus, lo the stars shining. Okay, here it is. I'm using the tune that's associated with the lines, we would see Jesus, lo as stars shining, above the stable while the angels sing. There in a manger on the hay reclining, haste let us lay our gifts before the King. Now, it doesn't perfectly work, but I had to make a few tweaks. Mutatis mutandis, it does work. So, here's the tune as I set God the Omnipotent to it. And maybe that's a bit of an odd choice, but the vibe's not that different, really, if you think about it. This is different from when I might make a somewhat odd editorial decision, and it's not exactly a weird one, just unusual. Because for a long time, hymn words and tunes weren't as tightly associated as they are now. This is how you can have the same words set to multiple different tunes. Which I'm going to demonstrate here. Most people in the U.S., they think of these lines. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Isaac Watts was a lyrical genius. I don't think anyone can deny this. I always mention two of the greatest hymnists in the English language, Isaac Watts and Charles Wesley, and they both had mad respect for each other. Now, here's if you're in the U.S., you probably associate it with this tune. The second most likely tune you're going to associate it with is probably this one. There's another choice I've heard associated with that actually works surprisingly well. It's an old English or maybe Scottish folk melody. And it's sometimes used with other hymns. And it goes like this. You might associate this with Hal Hobson's The Gift of Love, which I'd love to be able to use, but I got copyright issues with the lyrics. So, trying to license a hymn that's copyrighted for a small channel like mine, it's probably a little rich for my blood. I haven't really tried outside of, sticking out tentacles to the likes of, one license is CCLI. They're really not a good fit for this. This one wasn't a political choice, but I go back and forth between the first tune, Lowell Mason's Hamburg, and this one, Whaley Whaley. I think the thing about those two is Hamburg is used because it is a very simple tune. Where Whaley Whaley it's also simple, but it's kind of dark. Even as a major key tune, it is a dark tune. And I figure, a little editorial discretion, I can deal with that. I'm fine with changing things up a little bit, throwing a curveball in the mix. I'm not going to do something stupid like set Amazing Grace to the tune of 4,000 Tongues or something like that. But anyway, Jesus freak out.